I walked in on them, smiling, like nothing was wrong. But the moment she spoke, everything changed. My heart sank. It was the last thing I expected from the person I had trusted the most, my daughter. This isn't just a betrayal, it's a devastating revelation that would shake anyone to their core. You'd think that after all these years I'd know my own daughter, but what I walked in on that day shattered everything. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me introduce myself. I'm Clara. I'm 65 years old and have lived a full life. Some would call it a good one. I lost my husband a few years ago, and though it hasn't been easy, I've done my best to keep going. I've got a lot to be grateful for. A beautiful home, a loving daughter, and a long-time best friend, Marlene, who's been by my side for decades. You'd think I had everything in order, right? But sometimes life throws a curveball, and this one was the biggest of them all. I've always known that family dynamics can get tricky, especially when money is involved. My husband left me an inheritance, a sizable one, and while I had always planned on passing it on to Lily, I never imagined the lengths she would go to in order to get her hands on it. Lately, there's been something off about my daughter, Lily. She's been distant, acting like she has some secret she's hiding. And Marlene, my best friend, she's been acting a little too close to Lily. A little too friendly. Every time I bring up the inheritance, there's this uncomfortable silence, a tension in the air. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I had no idea how deep it went. One afternoon, I had a feeling something wasn't right. The house felt oddly quiet. I could hear whispers coming from the living room. I thought it was nothing at first, but when I walked in, I saw something that I'll never forget. There they were, Lily and Marlene, smiling like nothing was wrong, talking like everything was fine. But it wasn't. I could tell they'd been up to something. I had this gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach that something was brewing, something that could change everything. Then Lily whispered something that stopped me in my tracks, something that made my blood run cold. The words I heard next were more than just a betrayal. They were a blueprint for a plan that could ruin me. It was the kind of thing you only read about in books, the kind of thing that destroys families. Lily turned to Marlene, her voice low but clear. "We'll take care of it. She won't know what hit her." At that moment, I realized they weren't just planning something minor. They were planning to steal my future, and I had to stop them before it was too late. What I overheard next made my heart race. The plan they had was more calculated, more devious than I could have ever imagined. The moment I heard those words, everything changed. I wasn't just hearing a casual conversation, I was hearing a plot. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, was part of it. You have to understand, Lily and I were always close. She was my pride, my everything. Even after my husband passed, she was my rock. But over the last few months, something had shifted. It wasn't just her distance, it was the way she acted. She would come over, but I'd catch her looking at me with this strange, almost calculating look in her eyes. Then there was Marlene. She'd been my best friend for as long as I could remember. We shared everything, joys, sorrows, and the memories of decades spent together. I never thought I'd have to question her loyalty. But now it seemed like she'd been changing too. Her smiles were too wide, and her promises of helping out felt more like manipulation. The inheritance my husband left behind was significant, a large sum of money, plus assets I was planning on dividing up between Lily and a few charities. I knew it would come up eventually, but I never expected this. Never expected Lily and Marlene to conspire behind my back. You see, Lily was always struggling financially. She wasn't great with money and had made a lot of poor decisions. But Marlene? She always seemed so secure, so wise, always offering advice. What I didn't realise was that Marlene had been guiding Lily down a dangerous path, one where my inheritance was the ultimate prize. They'd talked before about me being too old to handle my affairs, about how I needed help with everything, but I never imagined they'd take it this far. That day, when I overheard them talking in the living room, my gut told me to stay quiet, to listen longer. What I heard next confirmed my worst fears. Lily's voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, a sharpness that I'd never heard before. Marlene was saying, "Once we get the papers signed, it'll all be ours. She won't even remember doing it. We'll have full control." My stomach churned. Control? They were planning to take my life savings without a second thought. But the most shocking part? Lily was in on it. I was crushed. How could Lily, the daughter I raised, the daughter who swore she loved me, do this? I felt my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. How long had they been planning this behind my back? How long had I been blind to it? Every memory with Lily felt like a lie. Every moment we'd shared, every piece of advice I'd given her, felt like it had been wrapped in deceit. I was no longer sure who she was, or if I ever really knew her at all. But I couldn't give up yet. I couldn't let this go without a fight. My mind raced. How could I expose them? How could I prove what I'd overheard? The plan they'd concocted was too elaborate, too dangerous. They would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. But I had one chance to act. I decided I would need to confront them, but only when I had all the proof. I wasn't going to let them walk away from this so easily. The more I heard, the worse it got. They weren't just planning to steal my inheritance, they were planning to take control of my life. The depth of their betrayal didn't sink in until I overheard the next part of their conversation. This wasn't just a family argument about money. It was something far darker. I had to act quickly. The conversation I overheard that day left me shaken and determined. I couldn't just walk in and confront them without proof. No, I had to be smart about this. I started watching their every move, listening more carefully to what they said, looking for the smallest detail that could help me expose their plot. But what I found, well, it was worse than I ever imagined. They weren't just talking about forging documents. No, they were actively planning how to make me seem incapacitated, like I wasn't mentally capable of managing my own finances. The thought made my blood run cold. Lily, my own daughter, was going to go so far as to fake my mental decline, all so she and Marlene could control my money. "Once we get her to sign the papers," Marlene said, "we'll have access to everything. We can make her believe she needs us more than ever." I could barely breathe. How long had they been planning this? How could Lily do this to me? I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The plan they were devising was in full motion. I had to act fast. I started recording their conversations whenever I could. I didn't want to just confront them without proof. I wanted to have evidence, something that would expose their treachery once and for all. I had to be careful. If they found out I knew, if they realized I was onto them, they might get even more dangerous. But what other choice did I have? That afternoon, I overheard another conversation that sealed my decision. Lily and Marlene were talking about how they were going to manipulate my lawyer, get me to sign a new will that cut out all my other beneficiaries. They were going to present me as someone who was too weak to know what I was doing. Marlene was saying, "Once we have her alone, we can make her see it's the best thing for her. She'll trust us." The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about money. This was about control over my life, over my choices. If they succeeded, I'd be nothing more than a puppet, doing what they told me, with no say in my own future. I felt betrayed by both of them. Marlene had always been a friend. I never imagined she could be a part of this. And Lily? She was my daughter, the one person I believed I could trust, the one person who should have had my back no matter what. But they were both working together now, trying to take everything I had. I had to act. I had no choice. But what could I do? They had already taken steps to manipulate me, to make sure I'd sign over everything without question. I decided to take the evidence to a lawyer. But how would I confront them without putting myself in danger? How would I reveal their plot without making things even worse? Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, I found something that would change everything. The final piece of the puzzle. I was done waiting. I had enough proof. It was time to confront them. But this time, it wasn't just about me confronting them. This was going to be about making sure they couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. The evidence I had gathered was undeniable. I'd recorded their conversations, collected documents they'd discussed, and even caught them on video talking about how they were going to manipulate me into signing the new will. But there was one final piece that I needed. One thing that would destroy their plan and expose them for good. I found the final piece when I walked into the living room early one morning. There, sitting on the coffee table, were the papers. The forged documents. They were already signed in my name, but the signature was forged, and the document was tailored to look like I was giving them full control of everything I owned. Marlene and Lily had planned this for months. They thought I wouldn't notice. But I had caught them. I couldn't believe it. I felt my world spinning. How could they be so cold, so calculated? But there it was, in front of me, the betrayal. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about them taking over my life, and I wasn't going to let that happen. I took a deep breath and called the lawyer. "I need to see you today," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "I've got the proof." I was done playing nice. No more waiting, no more wondering if I was imagining it all. They were going to face the consequences of their actions, no matter what. As I gathered the papers and my evidence, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was no longer just Clara, the woman they thought they could manipulate. I was a woman fighting for control of her life, her future, and her dignity. I wasn't going to let them win. I knew they were going to deny it, that they'd try to convince me it was all a mistake. But I had the proof. They couldn't talk their way out of this one. When I walked into the living room later that day, I saw both of them sitting there, almost waiting for me. They thought they had the upper hand, that I didn't know the full extent of their plan. But they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Lily looked up first, her face pale when she saw the look in my eyes. Marlene, ever the manipulator, tried to smooth things over with a nervous laugh, but it was too late. I laid the papers down on the table. "You're both finished," I said, my voice steady, cold. The silence that followed was deafening. They knew I had them, but would they try to talk their way out of it, or would they crumble under the weight of their lies? The moment I laid down the forged documents in front of them, I watched their faces turn from confidence to sheer panic. Lily tried to look innocent, but I could see the guilt in her eyes, the look of someone who knew they had been caught. Marlene, ever the manipulator, attempted to explain away everything, but her shaky voice betrayed her. "You don't understand, Clara," Marlene said, her tone desperate. "We were only trying to help you. You needed help. You were too weak to handle everything on your own." That's when I realized the full extent of their plot. They thought they could play on my age, make me feel vulnerable and trick me into believing that I needed their help. But it was never about helping me. It was about controlling me, about taking everything I had worked for. "You were never helping me," I said firmly, my voice calm but with a strength I hadn't realized I had. "You were stealing from me, manipulating me." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of those words sink in. I won't be your pawn, Lily. And you, Marlene, you've been a friend? You should be ashamed of yourself. Lily and Marlene fell silent. Their eyes were wide, searching for an escape, but there was no way out. The evidence was in front of them, the documents, the recordings, everything. There was nothing they could say to fix it. I felt a rush of relief. I thought I would feel anger, and maybe I did, but what overwhelmed me was relief. I had taken control back. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't just someone they could walk all over. I was Clara, and I had just exposed their lies. But the relief was bitter. I couldn't help but feel the ache of betrayal, of all the years spent trusting Lily, loving her, only for her to choose greed over family. Tears filled my eyes as I turned away from them, but these weren't just tears of hurt, they were tears of strength. I had done the right thing, and now I could finally breathe easy, knowing I wasn't letting them manipulate me anymore. The consequences of their actions were inevitable. Marlene, once a pillar of my life, had become a traitor. She lost her longtime friends, and most importantly, the trust she had taken for granted. People knew now what she was capable of, and the truth about her deceit spread like wildfire. No one would trust her again. As for Lily, well, the damage was just as severe. She was my daughter, but that didn't matter to her anymore. She thought that with enough lies, she could take everything from me. Her future was now in question. The lawyer had all the proof needed to show that she had manipulated me, and she would have to face the legal consequences for her role in this scheme. I was heartbroken for her, but I knew this was a lesson she needed to learn. A painful one, but one that would shape her life going forward. The aftermath wasn't easy, but as I sat in my living room, looking at the remains of the betrayal that had once been my family, I felt a sense of peace. I had taken my life back. I decided to donate part of the inheritance to charity, as my husband had intended. I wasn't going to let his legacy be tainted by greed. As for Lily, well, I wasn't sure if we could ever fully repair our relationship. But that was for her to figure out. I had learned something important through this ordeal. Never let anyone take away your control. No matter how much they claim to love you, no one should have the power to rob you of your independence. As I sat back, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, I knew I was stronger than I had ever been. I wasn't just Clara the widow, the mother, the friend. I was Clara, a woman who took control of her life, even when the people she trusted the most tried to take it from her. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm glow through the window. I smiled softly, knowing I had made it through. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was mine, and that was enough.